Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
What's going on, guys? Unofficial Star Wars here. Hope you're all doing well, and in this video we're going to be talking about Obi Wan Kenobi and how Vader originally won the final battle between Darth Vader and Obi Wan Kenobi in the season finale. In this video we're going to be taking a read from the Direct's article as per usual, and I'm going to have that full article linked down in the description down below. As it reads, Darth Vader originally won Obi Wan Kenobi's final battle. This here is said to be exclusive as well. As it starts, Darth Vader turned out that to be one of the most prominent characters in the Obi Wan Kenobi series on Disney Plus, portrayed by Hayden Christensen reprising the role. The character served as the main antagonist and stood opposite from his former master Ian McGregor's Obi Wan Kenobi. After the announcement that the character would be included in the project and that Hayden Christensen would be making his return to reprise his role with Star Wars in the Obi Wan Kenobi show, many fans wondered how exactly he would be used. Once the Dark Lord of the Sith found out about Obi-Wan Kenobi's whereabouts in Part 3 of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, the two characters had their first on-screen interaction since 2005's Revenge of the Sith, over a decade. The end of the episode featured a brief duel between them, resulting in Obi-Wan getting injured and then saved from Vader's grasp by Indriya's Vrama's Tala. And from there, the next time that the characters come face to face was in the finale of the show. They dueled once again, but this time Obi-Wan was more in tune with the Force and defeated his former Padawan, just as he did on Mustafar 10 years prior in the Star Wars timeline in Revenge of the Sith. It's hard to imagine a story based around Obi-Wan Kenobi that doesn't include Darth Vader in some capacity at some point. In the original script for the project, that was intended to be a feature film, something we talked about here on the channel. The character was still largely present, but his role and confrontations with Obi-Wan Kenobi were really quite different. As the article continues and reads from there, Darth Vader's original role in Obi-Wan Kenobi. What was it like? In an exclusive interview with the Direct's Nathan Johnson, Obi-Wan Kenobi's writer Stuart Beatty described the role that Darth Vader played in the original version of the project script. Beatty wrote the script for the first 3 Obi-Wan Kenobi feature films, as it was originally intended to be a full-on movie trilogy, and his story was eventually turned into a season 1 on Disney Plus. To quickly take a recap here, for those of you guys that don't exactly know, that Obi-Wan Kenobi was originally intended to be a movie, and at that, a feature film that to be released in theaters, but also be a continuation into a full-on Obi-Wan Kenobi movie trilogy. This far, of course, having the season 1 that we have on Disney Plus acting as the first movie in this trilogy, leaving the potential idea and space and storytelling for another season of Obi-Wan Kenobi, as well as a third season for Obi-Wan Kenobi. This year with also an interview with the original writer with the Obi-Wan Kenobi, what was supposed to be a movie, with Stuart Beatty, and from there, as we know, Joby Harold had actually taken control here with the writing and took his original idea as intended to be a movie and pretty much took it and spaced it out more to a point of where instead of it being a simple 2 hours, he spaced it out into about 6 hours for the Disney Plus series. Now, as the article continues, Beatty briefly talked about how he was quote-unquote convinced Lucasfilm allowed him to tell his story. The writer said that the 2 core ideas involved Obi-Wan leaving Tatooine and coming face-to-face with Darth Vader once again. After he was told that, quote, neither of those things can happen, ending quote there, Beatty used Return of the Jedi to back up his claim. In the full quote as it reads of what he has to say, "So it's actually how I got it all going. I convinced them. I said to them, so the big radical idea was Obi-Wan must and has to leave Tatooine at some point in these 19 years of the events, of course, between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope." And further on that, he says he must have had a confrontation with Darth Vader, and they were like, neither of those things can happen. I was like, well, no, that must have happened. And they're like, why? And I said, well, there's a moment in Return of the Jedi when Luke hands himself over to Vader and he says, there's still good in you. I still believe there's good in you. And Vader replies, is Obi-Wan once thought as you do? And I pointed out to them that there is no point ever that happens in Revenge of the Sith or between A New Hope that this ever happens, because they never met. Obi-Wan Kenobi just goes to Mustafar and they have their big fight that we see in Revenge of the Sith, and he leaves him there to die. And they're like, oh my goodness, you're right, there must have been a point, ending the quote right there. It quite honestly is very interesting interesting in my own thoughts and opinions of how he was originally able to convince Lucasfilm and their other producers and storytellers of that this does make sense, and even convince me, and I think a lot of you other viewers out there, of how this actually does make sense, giving this, I guess, backing up here of what happens in Return of the Jedi, simply because of this one line that Vader says in the quote, "Obi-Wan once thought as you do." The article goes on to say the writer also talked about how people needed to, in quote, actually believe that Vader was the one who killed Anakin Skywalker, something kind of thought throughout the original trilogy up until the points of Empire Strikes Back, of where Luke Skywalker on Bespin originally learns that Darth Vader is indeed his father. And the full quote from Stuart Beatty, the original writer of what was supposed to be an Obi Wan Kenobi trilogy, says, end quote, and I followed it up with, how does someone talk about Darth Vader and betraying and murdering Anakin and actually believe it? There's got to have been more there. And then Padme saying to Obi-Wan as she died in his arms, there's still good in him. And then the idea that he thought Anakin was indeed dead. He thought he killed his brother this whole time. So she was wrong, and now he's alive. And oh my goodness, maybe she was right. Maybe there is still good in him, he says. So where did Vader get that the sense that Obi-Wan thought that there was still good in him? It was really from that line in Return of the Jedi that convinced them to hire me and to write this story, ending the quote right there. I will have to say once again in my own thoughts and opinions, that is a very crazy way of how Stuart Beatty was originally pitching this whole story and this idea to Lucasfilm, and how he was able to get around all of this stuff here from its other writers and producers and storytellers at Lucasfilm, saying that Obi-Wan and Vader cannot meet again, or that on top of that, that Obi-Wan can't even leave Tatooine. And as the article goes on to say, when talking about his version of Vader, BAT described him as, in quote, obsessed with Kenobi, ending quote there, and also obsessed with revenge, he says. He also revealed that the Emperor Palpatine played a role in his script from the beginning, rather than showing up at the end of the season. In full quotes of what Stuart Beatty has to say about this, end quote, to me, Vader is this period, is just so obsessed with Kenobi, so obsessed with revenge and what he did to me. You know, that he just wants to put a lightsaber to him, and that he doesn't want this to last for another second. He wants to kill this guy. In my film, he was under pressure from Emperor Palpatine from the beginning. Forget Kenobi. Forget Kenobi. That's Anakin. Let that go. Focus on the present. You've got this problem, and this problem you know, and Vader just can't let it go, is what Palpatine would say to Vader / Anakin in this original idea, ending the quote right there. As the article goes on to say, Stuart Beatty also revealed that his original script featured Vader thinking Obi-Wan died at the end of the film, and using that as justification for why the Sith Lord is, quote, shocked when he learns of his former master's survival in A New Hope, end quote. In mine, he really did believe that Kenobi was dead at the end of the first movie, and from there to let him focus on ruling the galaxy with his iron fist and the Empire, because it was always seemed that in A New Hope, he was shocked when he was like, I sense something, a presence I've not felt since, ending the quote right there. Beatty went on to say that, in quote, the only way that Vader could let Obi-Wan go as if he were to believe Kenobi was truly dead, ending the quote there. Now, in a full quote of what Beatty has to say here is that, so I always felt that this was the moment when he suddenly realized, oh my goodness, he's alive. I mean, in the next scene, he's talking to Tarkin, and Tarkin's like, what? No, he's dead. He's got to be dead, you know, but no, he's alive. So I felt that this was a justified and really the only way that Vader would have stopped hunting Kenobi is that he believed Kenobi was truly actually dead. And that there would be a scene from A New Hope is where Vader is talking to Tarkin and then senses Kenobi aboard the Death Star. From there, the article goes on to say, when asked about the duels between Obi-Wan and Vader in the series and how they differented from his script, Beatty started by saying that his version of their fight took place on a space station and that Vader was actually the victor. The writer revealed that, quote, Vader pushed Obi-Wan off of the station, which separated them and didn't allow them to finish the fight. In full quote of what he has to say, in mine, Vader won the fight. They were fighting on this space station. It was falling apart into the atmosphere of this big planet, and Obi-Wan basically fell off. Vader pushed him off and they separated. They didn't get the chance to find Obi-Wan, basically, but he was going through Obi-Wan's mind in the same thing of which, my brother is truly dead. He's gone. And while I absolve of that guilt because I didn't kill him, Vader killed him, at this point. I'm still just devastated. I'm absolutely devastated, he says. Ending the quote there, the article goes on to say that Stuart Beatty also talked about the importance of having them be separated because Obi-Wan would have killed Vader if he had gotten the chance in order to save countless lives, he says, which they were mainly other Jedi, and also not to mention Alderaan. The writer also continued by saying, by talking more about his movie, specifically about how the beginning of this depicted Vader as the big Jedi killer, something of by which Vader is known for and feared by throughout the galaxy in the Star Wars universe during this time period especially. In full quotes of what he has to say about that, to me, if Obi-Wan has the chance to kill Darth Vader, he would have done it and he would do it. I mean, you know, how many countless lives would he have saved, right? Especially knowing that Vader would be hunting other Jedi, which had been established in the show. My film began with Vader taking on 5 Jedi at once and killing them all, you know, so it established that very big Jedi killer type of vibe. The Inquisitors are capturing them, but Vader is the big daddy who comes in and just lays waste to any Jedi, all while hunting Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ending the quote right there. And oh my goodness, my immediate reaction to that sounds like such a badass way to open up a movie. And the more we read into this and find out more about the original idea and scripts and what the whole concept here, I guess, essentially is for what this Obi-Wan Kenobi show was once thought to be a whole-on movie trilogy, just sounds so much more damn cool. And it doesn't leave at that. They still can and have that opportunity and do these chances with continuing on the Obi-Wan Kenobi story, whether they do it with a Disney Plus season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi or they want to transfer these and develop them into actual movies, is something I think Star Wars fans would honestly, at the end of the day, really greatly like and appreciate and honestly consume and love. Now, the article from there goes on to say that Stuart Beatty then went on to explain what it is meant for Obi-Wan when he saw Anakin's face behind Darth Vader's mask at that final duel in the final episode. In full quotes, what he says, yeah, to me, he's looking at Anakin, and Anakin does come through, much like we see with Star Wars Rebels versus Ahsoka versus Vader. That's the moment where Obi-Wan is thinking, is this the moment to rescue my friend and bring him back and end all of this? Because remember all of the guilt that goes away and all the problems go away if Anakin is still alive and can be brought back into the light side of the Force. Ending the quote right there, however, of course, it's fairly self-explanatory. This here would create many plot holes within the Star Wars saga, with the whole original trilogy, Luke Skywalker bringing him back to the light side, and Return of the Jedi. The writer also talked about if Obi-Wan could have turned Anakin back from the dark side back to the light side, quote, the two of them could have paid a visit to Palpatine, ending the quote right there and ending everything. Now, of course, as cool as this sounds and would be, as I had just mentioned, it creates many plot holes with the original trilogy. It just doesn't make complete utter sense. But please do add this to your list of reasons why Star Wars needs a what-if show like the Marvel's Cinematic Universe does. There are so many different cool possibilities of what-if scenarios in the Star Wars universe, and this is just another one of those. In full quotes of what he has to say, however, about potentially having Obi-Wan have turned Anakin back from the dark side, and the two of them paying a visit over to Palpatine, in full quotes of that, that's option B, that Obi-Wan never thought was an option, because he thought Anakin was dead. So option A, the only option, was Luke Skywalker in the original trilogy. So all of a sudden, he's now presented with option B, and instantaneously, you don't have to wait for Luke to grow up and then get his powers and training as we would see in the original trilogy. You can do this instantly, right now. Bring Anakin back and boom, the two of you go pay a visit to Palpatine and it's all over. Ending the full quote right there. This year, as I had previously mentioned, would be such a cool idea to have in an animated Star Wars what-if show. And as I had mentioned, there are just so many different scenarios throughout the Star Wars timeline of different what-if kind of ideas, concepts, and scenarios we could see, and I think a lot of Star Wars fans would like to see. So with that, let me know in the comment section down below, what type of what-if scenario would you like to see in some time if there were to ever be a Star Wars what-if show. From there, the article goes on to continue to say that Stuart Beatty revealed that, in quote, the whole story was building to the confrontation between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Vader, specifically to the point where Obi-Wan sees his best friend's face. The writer explained that in an important moment for Obi-Wan's character, it's because of this exact exact moment that he realizes that Vader and Anakin are two separate people, truly. And the full quotes of what Stuart Beatty has to say, to me, that of what the whole story was building to was at this moment when I had Obi-Wan take the helmet off, or slash the helmet, and give him that scar that we see later on in Empire Strikes Back. That was from all of the building, and to the whole reason to tell the story was that for the moment for him to see Anakin, and in the moment to realize that Anakin has been truly killed, he says, and that this is Vader now. So the understanding to go through Obi-Wan, so that now he knows Vader did betray and murder Anakin Skywalker, and that these are truly two separate people as described in the original trilogy, confusing the heck out of the audience at the time, and as well as a young Luke Skywalker. From there, the article goes on to continue to say, when asked to talk more about Palpatine's role in the original script, the writer briefly described a comedic scene between the Emperor and Lord Vader, which is quite odd, especially for a time period at this in the Star Wars timeline and within the Star Wars universe. It is such a dark time period and period in the galaxy for our characters and all the people of the galaxy, so you don't really expect all that much comedy to really be going on or happening all that much. However, comedic evidence, or elements rather, are still things that were added on throughout the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, sprinkled in here and there. They still contributed and were alright in my own thoughts and opinions, however, they weren't really all that needed. But in full quotes, let's take a look at this of what Stuart Beatty has to say. Palpatine was sending Vader to crush a rebel uprising on a moon somewhere, and he was saying, forget Kenobi, forget Kenobi. And this really funny line I thought was funny, but it was, Vader saying that, look, Kenobi is one of the two biggest threats, and in the galaxy. And the Emperor responds with, well, pity you didn't kill him when you had the chance. And Vader responds with, the other one is Yoda. And the Emperor just gets really pissed off at him. You forget your place, laughs, So he's on him from the start. Let this go. That's Anakin, you're Darth Vader now. Ending the quote right there. This is somewhat of a comedic type of element, I would have to say, rather, as a response slash reaction to this kind of comedic type of idea or concept that was originally intended for the original idea for the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie. And of course, while Yoda is a very, high threat out there and one of the greatest powerful Force users in the galaxy, he's really not all that much of a threat at this time period. So it does pose the question of what was the original idea going on here with Yoda, something we'll probably talk about in a separate video. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join us today. Now from there, the article goes on to say the importance of including Darth Vader. Darth Vader is easily widely regarded as the greatest villain in history of film, since his first on-screen appearance in the opening scene of A New Hope in 1977. Star Wars fans have been wanting to know every detail about his entirety of his life. In the late 1990s, the creator of A Galaxy Far, Far Away, George Lucas, decided to make another trilogy of films set within the franchise to give a backstory to Vader and his showcase exactly that drove him to becoming the imposing killer who was more machine than man. While the prequels have endured their share of criticism in the past 2 decades, one of the elements that those films, as well as the Clone Wars animated show and TV series, or movie rather I should say, have really focused on is the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Now all these years later, those two characters' connections is still being fleshed out even now today, which is such a cool thing to see. According to the original writer Stuart Beatty, one of the main purposes of writing Obi-Wan Kenobi was to show the Jedi Master going on a journey of accepting the fact that his friend Anakin Skywalker had been killed by Darth Vader. Obi-Wan tells Luke himself in A New Hope that Vader betrayed and murdered Anakin. It is interesting on how both versions of the project were handled, Obi-Wan reaching that conclusion differently through the decision of the victor in the final battle. Darth Vader's victory over his former master in the original script demonstrates how unstoppable the Sith Lord has truly really become, whereas Kenobi's victory in the series show of how it is the only way for him to try to reason with his friend. The justification for Vader's victory also may lend itself a bit better to the events of A New Hope due to its informing of the Sith Sith's surprise at Obi-Wan's return. While both versions seem to intend on including Vader, it is notable that B-80's script attempted to flesh out his character in other ways, such as through his battle with the other Jedi. This was been seen in other Star Wars media like comics and books, and also even Jedi Fallen Order the video game, but it would have been exciting to see if this version of Vader would play out on screen in a TV series, or maybe even on the big screen in a movie theater and with a movie trilogy. It is almost impossible to craft a story about the character of Obi Wan Kenobi set between the events of Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope that doesn't include Darth Vader. They are like two sides of the same coin, and even though they may have their differences at the opposing ends of the spectrum, at this point in the Star Wars timeline, they are still essential to each other's stories because of the impact that they have. All 6 episodes of Obi Wan Kenobi are available to stream on Disney Plus, as the article ends right there. There is a lot of information here that we have to take away here with this whole entirety idea of the original script, the original ideas and concepts for what was supposed to originally be the Obi Wan Kenobi movie, and at that, a movie trilogy. Now, for one thing, if you're still watching, thank you guys so much. That really does mean the actual world to me. Leave a like if you haven't already. The unfortunate truth, however, that is uncovered here about the Obi-Wan Kenobi, what was supposed to be a whole movie trilogy, and the way that this was decided and the way it had originally been intended of its decision, is because of Solo, A Star Wars Story, and its accidental failure at the time in 2017. I believe that's when that released, and its whole boycotting because people didn't really like The Last Jedi all that much. Because of the way that Solo, A Star Wars Story had bombed the box office and didn't really receive all that well of ratings or really an audience response at the time, this year led to the inevitable decision from Lucasfilm to not go ahead any further with doing an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie trilogy, and rather to maybe simplify it into maybe a show on Disney Plus later to be introduced. Honestly, my thoughts and opinions, that's kind of what you guys deserve. That's what we deserve as Star Wars fans, and for being so bleak and just, I don't really know, so horrible, I guess, to Lucasfilm and Star Wars, so overly hateful or responsive to little things and little details that we simply just do not enjoy, and how that impacts other, I guess, projects that Lucasfilm are planning and have already put out. Because of people's response to Star Wars The Last Jedi, they simply did not like Solo, A Star Wars Story, and decided to boycott it without even seeing it. And whether or not you liked it from the beginning, Solo, A Star Wars Story since then has grown on the entirety of the Star Wars community as a whole, as people long for and beg for a Solo sequel to actually happen and continue. Something that's going to probably be a part of the Lando Calrissian show that was announced for Disney Plus, potentially coming in 2023. However, we just don't really know all that much for certain with that show. There, of course, of what we can do here with the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, however, relating back to that and talking about this, is there is what it could have been and there is what it still can be. This could have been a movie trilogy, but we still have that power to make this not a limited series and to have the inclusion of what was supposed to be a movie trilogy by adding on a season 2 and a season 3 for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. I think is something as Star Wars fans we should come together and do, which would be caused by voicing our opinions and our thoughts and openly, I guess, putting it out there that, hey, we would be open to this idea of continuing this story. I continuously mention this throughout other different videos here on the channel, as well as even as far as has a whole dedicated video talking about this, but the way that they ended this final duel for Obi-Wan Kenobi in its first season doesn't really ally with A New Hope, and how it really exactly ended there doesn't make all that much sense. The way that that final duel ends in Obi-Wan Kenobi, as we do know, is that Kenobi is the one that leaves Vader, and their line from A New Hope is that Vader refers to himself leaving Kenobi, so it would only make sense that there is to be a continuation of this story, hopefully and potentially in a season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, where these two meet again, fight again, and from there Vader is the one to leave Kenobi, and furthermore is to truly believe that Kenobi would actually be dead. This year would also help add on to the whole idea and aspects of having Obi-Wan Kenobi being that hopeful hero that we see later on in the original Star Wars movie, later on in the Star Star Wars timeline. He's totally open to the idea of just throwing himself out there. He's not really scared or trying to hide from the Empire at this time, or even Darth Vader, just full-on throwing himself on the Death Star. And he's also not really afraid of the idea of death after learning about the wills of the Force and the way to become a Force ghost later on with Qui-Gon Jinn, as that's the way that Season 1 of Obi Wan Kenobi really ends off from there. Now, this video isn't entirely talking about what could really happen with an Obi Wan Kenobi Season 2. I have other videos talking about that, so we will leave it as it is. The whole original idea, however, of Obi Wan Kenobi's final duel and having Darth Vader originally win that duel aligns much better with A New Hope, and also all the other different creative aspects and concepts that could have been included with this original idea of Obi Wan Kenobi and its movie trilogy. This here was rather a longer video, and I honestly really enjoyed making it and talking about all of this with you guys, so let me know of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. I'd actually love to hear what you guys all think in the comments down below. Leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it, as it really does help with the channel. Check out our Instagram on Official Star Wars for more Star Wars related content, link down in the description down below, and until next time, as per usual, I'll catch you guys in the next video. As always, may the Force be with you. Peace out.